Let's go to my first guest right now, Matt Vickers. He's Conservative MP. He's also Shadow Police and Crime Minister. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. We have a lot to get through. Let's get straight to it. Now, again, I think a lot of people will regard this as coming under your brief, even though it's an immigration issue, but because crime, illegally entering the country is a crime, but also a lot of people think it's a crime by politicians to have so many legal entrants as well. The latest immigration stats from the ONS showing we've had pretty much a halving of the number of legal migrants arriving in the country over and above those who leave the country, from 860,000 back in 2023 as a result of that Boris bounce in the year before, but down to 431,000 net migrants arriving last year. Do you hail that as a success of Tory policy, or is that just the latest abject failure of Tory policy?
I'd tell you it is still way too high, way too high. The reality is the numbers coming down because of what came forward from the last government with stopping people bringing their nan, their dad and their gran with them when they come over. It was the right thing to do. Why on earth we ever allowed people to bring so many dependents is beyond me.
And it wasn't just bringing your wife or your kids, was it? It was people being allowed to bring extended family.
It was at a scale that was just completely, utterly balmy and wrong. If you're a student, I can't think of anything worse than bringing my mum away to university with me. I think it'd be utterly nuts to have to put up with my mother at university. Why you would want to bring her?
Let's hope Mrs. Vickers isn't listening, eh?
I never went to the trouble of moving to another country to get away from her, but crikey, I would not want to bring her to university with me. But
you are in so much trouble when you get off air, mate. You are in so much trouble.
These people bringing dependents to university, students bringing. It's balmy.
Yeah, but it's balmy. Happened under your watch, as in you're an MP. Your government did it. Labour are going to claim. Labour are going to claim this is a great success, much lower than when the Tories were in charge. And you and I both know it's all down to changes in Tory policy. But the original massive boom was under you guys, and as you say, it's still way too high.
It wasn't. Do you know what Kemi has said? It is way too high. She's conceded that previous governments have got it completely wrong. She wasn't the leader. I certainly wasn't a minister, so it's not quite my watch, but. I completely, it is way too high. They do not need to be bringing dependents into the country. This number could have even been even lower, significantly lower, because we were supposed to bring in a salary threshold in April, which would have meant somebody who comes into this country and brings a dependent had to be earning 38,000 and something. That was the right thing to do. If you bring somebody to this country with you, you should be able to fund that person to support them. They shouldn't be reliant on the taxpayer and public services to support them. Labour trashed that idea. They've binned it, they've paused it, they've delayed it. It would have kicked in. These numbers could have been lower still. It's all going in the wrong direction. Yes, legal migration is going down. Illegal migration is through the roof. It's up 38%. It was going down under the last government. The number of people in hotels was going down. Now up 28%, 30% more people coming into the country, 28% more in hotels across the country. And we know what that costs. We know what those communities, what happens to them when they've got all these pressures on them. But then the number of people arriving in boats and being removed, even though that number's going up, the people arriving, that number is going down, the people who are being removed. It's madness. It's
no, I don't think it's madness, but there's a reason why you guys are doing terribly in the polls and Labour are doing terribly in the polls, and Reform are up at 29% right now, is because they're not responsible for any of this stuff, and they've been calling this stuff out since they began.
Well, Kemi's been calling it out. I've been calling it out.
But she was part of a party, part of a government which oversaw the growth in this. That's the thing. Can you understand why a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of my audience will be saying, oh, yeah, you're talking a good game now, but when you were in power, you talked good game before you were in power, and then you still let it get worse. That's what they're going to say.
It's very easy to say that, but the reality is that I wasn't in power. I was a backbench MP like Lee Anderson, like Andrew Jenkins. In fact, Andrew Jenkins was a minister. But the reality is they got it wrong. Kemi's conceded that. We put forward a plan, but we haven't just put forward a plan. We're in there arguing the toss. There's a bill went through Parliament last week, the chance to vote on some of this stuff. We brought forward amendments to disapply the Human Rights Act, amendments to basically the first time you commit a crime, you are going home. These were the right things to do. We were in there arguing the toss. I don't know where Reform was. It's very easy to send a tweet. It's very easy to get on the television, but it's much more difficult to get in there and actually fight to change the law.
Well, again, I don't think it is hard to actually decide how many people come into your country or not. I just think it's really, really very simple. If the Home Office actually hands out the actual visas, it's really, really, really simple. Let's talk about something else, though. Let's talk about, where you are as Shadow Policing and Crime Minister. A lot of people are very concerned about crime and basically concerned that basically criminals aren't being punished. Shoplifters, shoplifters, burglars, anything, just not being punished. I mean, rapists, even someone accused of rape, they're taking like 3 years before they even get to court. But paedophiles and other sex criminals, we're told, front page of the Sun today, will be castrated, chemical castration, to basically dull their sexual urges under a tough new crackdown, something that Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood is looking at. It happens in other countries, but is this the answer, and do you think it'll ever happen?
I think, well, do you know what? I think we should be looking at all these things, but the reality is that this is a bit of a smokescreen, because the other thing that's been announced today is the sentencing review. The sentencing review that's going to allow people to come out of prison after serving less than a third of their sentence. That is balmy. That is absolutely nuts. What is the point in having a court system and waiting, as you've said, months, years to get through the courts if then somebody gets out after a third of the sentence?
I agree with you, and my audience would agree with you. I don't even know why we bother having prisons anymore, but which party's fault is it that was in power for 14 years, increased sentencing for a lot of serious offenders, a good thing, but didn't think you might need to build some more prisons at any point?
Right. So the reason there is pressure on our prison system is because A, we toughened up sentencing and sent people to prison for longer. B, we made the decision. I agree with what the last government did in toughening up those sentences. I agree with what the last government did when it made the decision not to release people during the pandemic. I think those were the right things to do. I think we need to be locking up more people. I think that was progress. And actually, the last government embarked on the biggest prison building programme since the Victorian age. They were building 6 prisons. 2 of them were already up before we left office. A third one's opened its doors now. The others are in motion, happening.
But too late.
The government, it takes forever. It takes way too long. But the biggest problem with our prison population challenge is the fact that around 10,000, 12% of prisoners in our prison estate are foreign national offenders. Those people need to be returned from wherever they came, and they need to be returned straight away. Last week in the House of Commons, there was a vote to do just that. There was the opportunity to A, disapply the Human Rights Act, and B, make the decision that anyone who comes to this country and commits a crime should be deported. It's the right thing to do.
Okay, but again, wasn't happening under the Tory. I'm going to keep harking back on this. Wasn't happening under the Tory watch. And by the way, maybe a lot of these people shouldn't be in the country in the first place, because it's not like these people were all just sort of, they didn't have little halos on or their little angel.
That's probably where we need to get to.
They didn't have their angel wings on when they arrived here. A lot of these people.
Well, we know disproportionately the number of them that are much more likely to commit a crime than the average member of the population here in the UK who's already here. It's wrong. It's horrendous.
Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about winter fuel allowance. Keir Starmer at PMQs yesterday, pretty shocking announcement. We've been trailed, but finally did it, undermining his Chancellor. Rachel Reeves always said no choice but to cut the winter fuel allowance for 10 million pensioners because they just all that £22 billion black hole. She's always claimed. He says there's going to be changes on that to make more pensioners eligible. A massive big U-turn, undermining his Chancellor's arguments on this. He says it's because the economy has improved. I don't think anyone else has noticed the economy improving, but do you welcome that change?
It's a bizarre. I welcome the change. I welcome anything that goes back to the drawing board, because this was completely the wrong thing to do. Millions of pensioners sat in the cold this year because of this bizarre, stupid, half-baked idea that's put them in the cold. It's completely wrong. So I welcome the fact it's coming back to the drawing table. But actually, to say the economy is in a better shape is just absolutely ridiculous. There are more people out of work. Inflation now nearly doubled. Everything is going well. Growth stagnating. It's not a good picture for the economy in this country. You know why it's not a good picture? Because he's taxing to death anybody who dares to go out of work or tries to create jobs or tries to add economic growth to their local economy.
Okay. Just finally, I want to ask you about the Chagos Islands. It was expected the Prime Minister was going to do a virtual signing of a deal to hand over the British-owned Chagos Islands to the Mauritians. No one can quite work out why. They've never owned Chagos Islands. They don't have any claim. I do not understand why it's happening. Apparently a top priority for this Labour government. And we were going to be paying £9 billion a year. Basically, out of the goodness of our hearts, to give away something that we've already got, still to continue leasing that key military base at Diego Garcia. That has now been, temporarily halted by a court injunction given in the early hours of this morning to a Chagosian who went to court to stop this from going ahead. What do you make of that?
I do wonder. I don't know whether Keir just hates this country. Everything he negotiates he's never on our side in the table. Whether it be Chagos dishing it out and paying a fortune for it, whether it be, well, we saw the Indian workers stuff, he uses tax breaks for Indian workers at the same time as he's taxing to death British companies who happen to employ people and create jobs. Well, the EU, we've seen what he's done to fishing. No matter which negotiating table he gets round, he seems to be sat at the wrong end, and Chagos is a prime example of it.
I mean, that is a fair analysis, is it not? We'll have to let you go, Matt Vickers. Get on the phone right now, mate. Call your mum and say sorry. I'm just warning you now. Matt Vickers, Conservative MP, Shadow Policing and Crime Minister. Philip Ingram, do you want to come back in on Chagos?
Chagos is, it is a security risk to the United Kingdom and to the West.
Why are they doing it?
There's no logic behind it whatsoever.
Unless Keir Starmer is basically fully paid, basically as a member of the Communist Party of China, because his benefits China because they're close to Mauritius. They basically bought up Mauritians. I mean, and we'll have access to that base. Unless that is the reason why. There's no reason why you would do this.
There's no reason whatsoever, and thank goodness the Americans have got Diego Garcia occupying that, because whenever this deal runs out, the Americans are going to turn around to Mauritius and say, no, you can go away, fight me. But there are questions that have to be answered here, and this is one where Keir Starmer should have, for potential personal historical interests, have stepped back and gone, I want nothing to do with this.
All his HR lawyer mates are involved.
Correct.
Yeah,